Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. Look at that coat, straight from the Great Depression. The boy's laughter cut through the autumn air like shattered glass. The elderly woman on the park bench stiffened, her weathered hands pausing mid-motion, breadcrumbs falling between trembling fingers. Around her, the small gathering of teenagers snickered, their designer jackets gleaming under the park lamps, phones raised to capture her humiliation. The park had emptied as evening approached, golden leaves dancing across abandoned pathways. Only a handful of witnesses remained, a jogger who picked up pace, a couple who lowered their voices, a mother who pulled her curious child closer. Nobody intervened. The woman's isolation was palpable, a silent bubble of dignity under assault, punctuated by the cruel commentary that grew louder with each passing moment. From the shadows of a nearby path, a figure in a worn leather jacket observed the scene, half hidden beneath a casual beanie. Most wouldn't have recognized him in this subdued attire, but the distinctive cheekbones and thoughtful eyes belonged unmistakably to Johnny Depp. He watched the woman's silent dignity, the teenager's casual cruelty, and the bystander's studied indifference. His expression darkened as he made a decision that would transform an ordinary evening into something none of them would ever forget. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. The elderly woman, Eleanor was her name, though none of the teenagers had bothered to ask, had been coming to the same bench every Tuesday for 17 years. After her husband's passing, it became her ritual, feeding the birds while remembering their walks together along these same paths. Her coat, now the object of such derision, had been his final gift to her. The wool was worn at the elbows, the buttons mismatched replacements, but to her it remained beautiful, a warm embrace from someone long gone. The leader of the group, a tall boy with carefully styled hair, grew bolder as his friends' laughter encouraged him. His TikTok livestream had already attracted hundreds of viewers, comments flooding in as he narrated his discovery of this vintage fashion disaster. With each cruel joke, his followers multiplied. The validation intoxicated him, pushing him to escalate. He moved closer to Eleanor, performing now for his invisible audience, his expensive sneakers stopping just inches from the breadcrumbs scattered at her feet. "Serious question, ma'am," he said, his voice theatrical with mock politeness. "Did you buy that coat new? Or was it already ancient when dinosaurs roamed the earth?" His friends erupted in laughter, the sound echoing across the nearly empty park. Eleanor looked down, her shoulders curving inward, making herself smaller as the boy leaned closer with his phone. Johnny Depp had come to the park seeking solitude. Between film projects, these anonymous walks grounded him, moments of normalcy stolen from a life lived primarily in the spotlight. He'd chosen this park specifically for its quietness, its lack of crowds, a place where he could simply be another face among the evening shadows. But the scene unfolding before him pulled him back to memories of his own childhood, of seeing vulnerability exploited for entertainment, of the casual cruelty that humans could inflict upon one another. Eleanor's hands trembled more visibly now. She gathered her meager belongings, a worn paperback, a small paper bag that had contained bread for the birds, a faded blue handkerchief, and began to rise. Her movement was hesitant, dignity warring with the desire to escape. The teenagers, sensing their entertainment might leave, moved to encircle the bench. Their laughter had evolved into something predatory, territorial. The livestream's viewer count climbed past 1,000. "We're just having fun, Grandma," said a girl with immaculately styled hair, her designer bag swinging carelessly as she gestured. Don't you want to be famous? You're blowing up online right now." The others nodded, smartphones raised like shields, recording devices creating distance between the reality of what they were doing and their perception of it as harmless entertainment. In their minds, Eleanor wasn't fully human. She was content, a momentary character in their digital stories. The autumn wind picked up, sending golden leaves skittering across the pathway. It carried Eleanor's soft voice to Johnny's ears. "Please, I just want to go home." A gentle request that the teenagers ignored, too engrossed in their performance to register the genuine distress in her tone. The few remaining bystanders quickened their pace, eyes averted, participants in the silent contract of urban isolation. A jogger paused briefly, conflict visible on his face, before continuing his run with greater speed, choosing the path of non-involvement. Johnny's jaw tightened. He had spent decades portraying characters who faced moral choices, outsiders who stood against cruelty, misfits who discovered their own moral compass. But here, in this moment, he wasn't playing a role. This wasn't Jack Sparrow's flamboyant courage or Edward Scissorhands' innocent compassion. This was simply a human being witnessing wrong and feeling the weight of choice press upon him. He could walk away, preserve his anonymity, avoid the inevitable social media storm that would follow his involvement, or he could step in. The lead teenager had begun to mimic Eleanor's posture now, hunched over in an exaggerated imitation that drew fresh laughter from his friends. The comments on his live stream scrolled by rapidly, most encouraging the mockery, some suggesting new ways to escalate the content. Eleanor clutched her book to her chest like armor, eyes downcast. A lifetime of dignity being eroded in minutes for the sake of fleeting internet fame. That's when Johnny Depp stepped out of the shadows, removing his beanie, his decision made. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. The first teenager to notice Johnny froze mid-laugh, her perfectly manicured hand suddenly gripping her friend's arm with unexpected force. One by one, the group turned, entertainment forgotten as recognition dawned in their eyes. The lead boy, still performing for his live stream, remained oblivious for several seconds longer, until he registered the sudden silence, the shifted attention, the wide eyes of his followers. He turned slowly, his mocking smile fading as he came face to face with Johnny Depp. "No way," he whispered, phone still recording, now aimed at the actor. The live stream exploded with comments, viewers calling out in disbelief, demanding confirmation, accusing the teenager of staging the encounter. But the genuine shock on his face told a different story. This was no planned publicity stunt. This was the collision of their manufactured reality with something authentic and unexpected. Johnny walked past them without acknowledgement, his movements deliberate and unhurried. He approached Eleanor, who remained unaware of the newcomer's identity, seeing only a kind-faced stranger offering assistance. With a gentleness that silenced even the most restless of the teenagers, he sat beside her on the bench, positioning himself subtly between her and her tormentors. "Mind if I join you? The birds here seem to know you." His voice carried clearly in the hushed atmosphere, the familiar timbre instantly recognizable to millions, yet delivered with the simple humanity of one person speaking to another. Eleanor looked up, confusion momentarily replacing the distress on her weathered face. She offered a tentative smile, not yet understanding why the atmosphere had transformed so dramatically, why her tormentors now stood frozen like statues. "The sparrows are my favorites," Eleanor replied, her voice steadier now, finding strength in this unexpected kindness. "They remember me, I think. Been coming here since my Robert passed." She smoothed her coat with dignity, years of grace emerging through her discomfort. Johnny nodded, taking the small paper bag she offered and scattering a few breadcrumbs toward a curious bird that had approached despite the commotion. Behind them, the teenagers had begun an urgent, whispered conference. Their phones remained raised, but the nature of their recording had transformed, no longer documenting mockery, but capturing an unexpected celebrity encounter. The livestream's viewer count had tripled in seconds, comments racing by too quickly to read. The lead boy stepped forward hesitantly, social media instincts overwhelming his momentary shame. "Mr. Depp, sir," he began, voice cracking slightly, "could we maybe get a photo?" The question hung in the air, breathtaking in its audacity, its complete disregard for what had just transpired. Several of his friends winced visibly, suddenly aware of how the situation might appear to their unexpected famous witness. The jogger who had passed earlier had stopped at a distance, watching the scene unfold. A few pedestrians, noticing the commotion, slowed their pace. Johnny turned slowly, his expression neither angry nor accommodating, simply observant, taking in the expensive clothes, the still recording phones, the absence of genuine remorse. His voice, when he finally spoke, was quiet but carried across the now silent park. "I've been watching what was happening here." 5 simple words that fell like stones into still water. The teenagers shifted uncomfortably under his steady gaze, their former confidence evaporating as they realized how completely their actions had been witnessed. The lead teenager, sensing his social currency rapidly depreciating, attempted recovery. "We were just having some fun, you know. No harm intended." He forced a laugh that found no echo among his suddenly solemn friends. The livestream chat had transformed too, previous encouragement replaced by viewers calling out the group's behavior, the mood shifting as more people joined and understood the context. "That coat," Johnny said unexpectedly, turning back to Eleanor with genuine interest, "looks like it has a story." The simple redirection, the choice to engage with Eleanor rather than lecture the teenagers, carried more power than any direct confrontation. It elevated her humanity while highlighting exactly what the teenagers had failed to see, that behind the object of their ridicule was a person with depth, history, and dignity. Eleanor's eyes brightened, decades momentarily falling away. "My Robert gave it to me on our 30th anniversary. Saved for months from his factory job." Her hands caressed the worn wool with reverence. "He said blue brought out my eyes." For the first time, the teenagers truly looked at her, not as content, not as a prop, but as someone who had loved and been loved, who had a life extending far beyond their brief, cruel intersection with it. Johnny listened with undivided attention, the kind of presence he brought to his most acclaimed roles, now focused entirely on this woman's story. The contrast was stark and instructive. His genuine interest in an elderly stranger versus their mockery. His recognition of her value versus their dismissal. Without a word of direct criticism, he was teaching through example, demonstrating how humans should treat one another. The teenagers lowered their phones slowly, one by one, some slipping them into pockets, their earlier excitement curdling into something uncomfortably close to shame. The remaining park-goers had stopped pretending not to watch, forming a loose semicircle around the bench, witnesses to this unexpected moment of public reckoning. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk. "I was an outsider too, you know," Johnny said, his voice carrying just enough for the teenagers to hear, though his words were ostensibly for Eleanor alone. "Growing up, I never quite fit. People can be quick to judge what they don't understand." He gently traced a finger along the coat's worn seam. The things that mean the most to us rarely have anything to do with their price tag. Eleanor nodded, recognition dawning in her eyes as she finally placed his face. "You're that pirate fellow, aren't you? My granddaughter loves those movies." Her lack of pretension, the simple way she acknowledged his fame without being overwhelmed by it, brought a genuine smile to Johnny's face, one that reached his eyes in a way that manufactured red carpet smiles rarely did. The lead teenager's phone, still recording, captured this authentic moment of connection between a Hollywood star and an ordinary elderly woman. His live stream had exploded now, over 50,000 viewers watching as this unexpected drama unfolded. The comments had become overwhelmingly critical of the teenagers, many viewers expressing outrage at their behavior, others praising Depp's intervention. The digital court of public opinion had rendered its verdict, and the teenagers were feeling the weight of it with each passing second. "I'm sorry," said a girl from the back of the group, her voice small but distinct in the hushed atmosphere. She stepped forward, separating herself slightly from her friends, making a choice that required genuine courage. "What we did was really messed up." She looked directly at Eleanor, accepting the discomfort of accountability. Johnny watched silently, giving space for this moment to unfold without his intervention, understanding that genuine remorse couldn't be forced or rushed. The lead boy stood frozen, live stream still running, caught between public humiliation and genuine self-reflection. He looked from Johnny to Eleanor, then down at his expensive sneakers. The silence stretched, uncomfortable and necessary. Then, with visibly trembling hands, he lowered his phone completely and hit the button to end the live stream. The symbolic act, choosing reality over performance, accountability over content, spoke louder than any verbal apology could have. "I didn't think about how it would make you feel," he admitted, voice cracking. "I was just trying to get views." The raw honesty of this confession hung in the air. Johnny nodded slightly, acknowledging the difficult truth the boy had voiced, the admission that he had prioritized fleeting internet fame over basic human decency. Eleanor's response surprised them all. "At my age, you learn that everyone makes mistakes," she said quietly. "It's what you do after that matters." Her grace in that moment was humbling. No dramatic accusations, no tearful breakdown, just the quiet dignity that had been with her all along, now visible to everyone present. The wisdom in her simple statement resonated beyond the immediate circumstance, touching on something universally human. Johnny reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notebook and pen. Those familiar with his public appearances recognized it, the notebook he often carried to jot down ideas or observations. He wrote something quickly, then tore out the page and handed it to the lead teenager. The boy took it with obvious confusion, unfolding it to find not an autograph, but a name and address. "That's a retirement home across town," Johnny explained, his voice calm but carrying undeniable weight. "They have a lot of residents who rarely get visitors. People with stories like Eleanor's. People with beautiful old coats and photographs of loved ones and memories that deserve respect." He paused, letting the implication settle. "If you're genuinely sorry, that's where you can go to show it." The weight of this response, not a lecture, not a public shaming, but an invitation to concrete action, shifted the atmosphere completely. Several of the teenagers nodded slowly, the possibility of redemption through genuine action offering a path forward that social media apologies never could. The girl who had spoken first took out her own phone, but instead of raising it to record, she opened her calendar app and made a note of the address. "I'll go this weekend," she said with quiet determination. This simple commitment, made publicly but without performative flair, carried an authenticity that was impossible to miss. Other teenagers murmured agreement, an unspoken understanding passing through the group that their shared mistake required shared accountability. Eleanor watched this transformation with gentle eyes that had witnessed decades of human folly and growth. "Perhaps you could come at 3 on Saturday," she suggested. "They serve a decent cup of tea, and my friend Martha plays old songs on the piano." The invitation, extended from the very person they had targeted, demonstrated a capacity for forgiveness that left several of the teenagers blinking back tears. Johnny rose from the bench, offering his hand to Eleanor with the same respect he would show to any distinguished colleague. "I believe I've made you late for your evening programs, ma'am," he said with genuine regret. "Would you allow me to walk you home?" The simple courtesy, delivered without fanfare, provided the teenagers with yet another masterclass in how humans might treat one another. Eleanor accepted his arm with natural dignity. As they prepared to leave, Johnny turned one last time to the group of subdued teenagers. "The thing about stories," he said thoughtfully, "is that we're all writing them every day with our choices. Today's chapter wasn't your best work." He gestured toward the address he'd given them. "But the next one could be better." This final observation, delivered without malice but with unmistakable challenge, completed the lesson, not through humiliation, but through invitation to growth. Several bystanders who had gathered to watch nodded in silent agreement, witnesses to this unexpected moment of public philosophy from an unlikely source. "It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it." By morning, fragmented videos of the encounter had spread across social media platforms. Clips filmed by bystanders merged with portions of the lead teenager's ended livestream, creating a digital mosaic of the event. Unlike many viral celebrity moments, the focus wasn't primarily on Johnny Depp's presence, but on the transformation that had occurred. The shift from cruelty to accountability, from performance to authenticity. Comment sections filled with reflections rather than mere celebrity worship, people sharing stories of times they'd witnessed bullying and remained silent, times they'd intervened, times they wished they had. The teenagers, waking to find themselves unwitting stars in a viral moment of moral reckoning, responded with unprecedented maturity. Instead of attempting to capitalize on their brush with fame, several of them posted thoughtful reflections acknowledging their behavior and committing to Eleanor's retirement home visit. The lead boy, whose live stream had started it all, uploaded a single, unedited video. No background music, no careful lighting, just a straightforward acknowledgement of what he'd learned about the hollow pursuit of viral fame at others' expense. Eleanor, uninterested in social media, learned of her internet fame only when her granddaughter called, voice pitched high with excitement. "Grandma, you're trending with Johnny Depp." Eleanor's response was characteristically grounded. "He's a nice young man who remembered his manners, unlike some. Now tell me about your science test." Her refusal to be swept up in the celebrity aspect of the encounter became, ironically, one of the most quoted elements of the story as it spread. That Saturday afternoon, as promised, the teenagers arrived at Sunset Gardens retirement home. They came without cameras, without social media announcements of their good deed. Just 6 young people carrying homemade cookies and nervous expressions. The staff, who had seen the viral videos, greeted them with cautious optimism. In the community room, they found Eleanor at a table with 2 other residents, a half-finished puzzle spread before them. "You actually came," she said, surprise and approval mingling in her voice. For the next 2 hours, the teenagers listened to stories of Eleanor's 47 years with Robert, of Martha's career as a concert pianist before arthritis claimed her agility, of James's 3 Purple Hearts from a war that most history books now condense to a few paragraphs. The young visitors asked questions, offered to fetch tea refills, and gradually relaxed into genuine interaction. Johnny Depp, true to his preference for quiet charity over public spectacle, sent an anonymous donation to the retirement home's activity fund. When the director discovered the generous gift's source, she honored his request for discretion. The money went toward new books, art supplies, and a weekend music program. The only acknowledgement was a small plaque in the garden that quoted his words from that evening. The things that mean the most to us rarely have anything to do with their price tag. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. The teenagers continued their visits. Not for social media content, not for public recognition, but because they had discovered something valuable in those conversations across generations. The lead boy, whose designer clothes had once been his primary identity marker, began recording oral histories of the residents, preserving stories that might otherwise be lost. The girl who had been first to apologize started a weekend art program, sitting patiently with trembling hands that still held skill and creativity if given time and respect. Eleanor's blue coat became something of a quiet symbol at the home. When a new teenage volunteer program launched the following spring, its simple logo featured a blue coat button with the tagline, "Value the story, not just the surface." The program expanded to retirement homes across the city, each participant learning what those first 6 teenagers had discovered in their moment of public reckoning, that beneath every weathered exterior lies a life of depth and meaning, waiting for someone to listen. Johnny Depp never publicly discussed the incident, maintaining his characteristic respect for private moments even in an age of constant documentation. When asked in an unrelated interview about what constituted true elegance, however, he paused thoughtfully before answering. "Elegance isn't about what you wear or own. It's about how you treat people when nothing's in it for you. I've met people in decades-old coats with more genuine class than some in designer suits." Those listening carefully recognized the reference, though few knew the full story, of an autumn evening in a park, when a moment of casual cruelty transformed into an unexpected lesson about what truly matters and how easily we can choose kindness over content, connection over clicks, humanity over humiliation. Wow, what a story! If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think.